I got it.
He did get a good one in it.
But it did. It like right. I know.
I know, isn't it still like being in the garage? But anyway.
They gathered all this stuff for 50 years. And pretty quick the branch hits are going to all over the Pacific stations.
Yeah, you started all over.
Oh, that's what it's
That one changed.
Yeah, there was.
okay, thank you.
Yeah, that was
You and I ever had coal gas.
It was on 20. It's on 3. So I can't get it. My radios are old.
It's gone.
And the one I wish I could pay for
Too bad. We don't have it anymore.
I don't know how big a deal it would
They had tried money.
but it was shuffled several times. Most of them just
Yeah, it must have been 88 or 89.
for example.
All right, any other cards to collect? See one maybe coming down? I think we'll go ahead and start back up. So if we could get DEQ staff here and also Pacific Steel staff ready to answer questions.
Yeah, some of them did take it. Oh, right, right. They took the opportunity. My sister.
Surprise.
Once a year. Well, yeah, right.
Okay, we'll go ahead and get started. We're starting back up! Okay, so we'll go ahead and start up here. Hopefully, is it louder? Can you hear better? Can you hear better now? Yeah? Okay, I will yell, and hopefully no one takes offense to me screaming. All right, we have a number of people online who have also asked questions, so we'll go ahead and go back and forth here. And if we could get members of Pacific Steel available to answer some questions, because we do have a number of questions for you, and I'll let you know when those questions come up. So the first group is all about traffic. So the first question is, will Highway 87 have turn lanes on both sides? What about the oil that has soaked the material? And then the next questions we'll ask Pacific Steel when they're up. So do we have an answer, or do you want me to send it to Pacific Steel for Highway 87 and the turn lanes?
Is this working? Okay. Can you hear me? Okay. So what, there was a MDT, like I said, Billings District MDT actually submitted their findings from a review of the original traffic study that was done by Great West, sorry. And they determined that there would not need to be any turning lanes added at that intersection. And that was MDT's finding as they reviewed that traffic impact study. I didn't know if Bob or anybody from Great West wanted to elaborate on that. All right, thank you, Fred. So there's a lot of comments on the traffic safety at the Shepherd Acton Road and the highway. And if you picked up the fact sheet at the front that we put together, there's a figure in there. And so what's interesting to understand about that intersection is that if you're turning left on the Shepherd Acton Road, or you're turning right off the Shepherd Acton Road on 87 heading south, the sight distance that is important is to the north. And we measured that, and there's plenty of distance, far exceeds the MDT standard for safe turning movements at that intersection. Now the other direction, south, there is inadequate sight distance that we measured there, but Pacific will not be making those turning movements into or leaving the facility. So that's why MDT reviewed a traffic impact study and determined that turning lanes or no other mitigation is necessary.
So if you could actually stay here, I can do a follow-up question. Sorry, yes, there's a thing there. What happens when the Johnson Lane Bridge opens, and will the Pacific traffic for change to 12 Mile Road and Shepherd Acton? So question on the Johnson Lane Bridge.
I can try Pacific answer that.
Okay, Pacific, if you're able to answer that question on traffic.
Well, the answer is yes. Our plan will be to use the new bypass bridge that goes to the roundabout, and then we will head west over to Highway 87 and then north.
Great, thank you. I see we have a number of comments on traffic concerns.
Can I say
Is there a follow-up question?
Can I say something in regards to the four-way you're talking about?
Sure, go ahead.
If you live in this area and you drive 87, you know that people are constantly passing on either side, like east side. Visibility, it's the people that are driving those that pay no attention to it whatsoever. That's why those turning lanes are needed. And if you're going to have bigger trucks with all kinds of garbage and the stuff that they're bringing in, and there's other people that are passing, that's why there's all those crosses all over, because so many people got killed.
Four
Because
white
people
crosses
aren't
at that
following the
intersection.
rules. And that's why we're saying we need those extra lanes, because it's a freaking death trap.
Thank you. And for those online, the comment was in regards to traffic passing on the road on either side and causing issues rather than visibility. Is there any other comments on that? Okay, thank you. We are listening and appreciate you providing comments. Okay, so the next question is for Pacific.
What stops them from using 12 Mile and Shepherd Acton Road?
I'm sorry,
When that Johnson Lane bypass opens, what stops them from using 12 Mile Road and Shepherd Acton that aren't regulated for all these heavy semi-trucks going through them?
Yeah, that's a great
That's all
question.
residential zoning too.
If you submit that via comment, we can also pass that on to MDT as well. I think that would be helpful. So please submit comments so that we can pass that along. So what will Pacific do for wind management and debris onto property, and such as things like dust and airborne pollutants? And so there's a number of questions on wind and debris and dust. Is Pacific able to address that? Do you want to address? Does anybody want to address? I'm sorry?
I'll take a shot at it.
Okay.
Pacific has agreed to a number of wind restrictions with the facility that Fred already covered. So at 35 miles an hour wind speed, they will immediately bury and compact the material. At 45, the facility will be shut down until the wind subsides. We'll be doing dust control on Shepherd Acton Road and then also on the on-site roads. So that's how dust will be addressed.
You know what, it seems like we don't get to ask questions.
She's reading your questions.
Yeah, but you're
question.
We have a number of questions that say the same thing, so I'm asking them to address the topic. If there's still lingering questions afterwards, we can definitely follow back up.
If the wind speed was only 25 miles an hour and all of Shepherd was covering smoke from a lesion clear out between Billings and Laurel from a fire there. This is 5-6 miles from where we live.
Right. Yeah, I understand. Smoke travels a lot throughout the state. Go ahead.
Prevailing winds are going to be from you to where we live.
Are you saying directionally, like from me to work to you? Okay.
So are you doing air monitoring, or do you just say you're going to dump this stuff in a hole, compact it, magically it's not going to blow up and come on our property in our direction?
Okay, yeah. And I see we have another question on garbage. So if you want to address, if someone's able to address garbage and air monitoring. Is that the same? Okay, so we've got a number of questions on that. Wind, garbage, and air monitoring. Is there someone from Pacific that's able to address that? Okay.
Well, the first thing, let's say my name is Kirby Farner. I do the compliance for Pacific's Steel Recycling in Great Falls. Just want to share, first of all, Pacific has been a Montana-based company for over 100 years.
Here, if you can maybe come a little closer to that as well.
So Pacific has been a company, a Montana-based company for over 100 years. And you don't do that if you don't follow the law. It's very important for us to do the right thing. We've got 46 locations in 9 states. And the body of work shows this, folks, that we recently went 80 months in 9 states and 46 facilities without a single environmental violation. That's over 5 years.
Say that again, I didn't hear.
Yeah, we went 80 months at 46 locations in 9 states without an environmental violation. And it's the truth. And I can also share something called EPA ECHO, and that stands for Enforcement Compliance History Online.
So I was on ECHO today, and Boise has 27 counts of late DMRs with pollution exceedances as high as 1,000% over benchmark. Spokane permit, WAR 310468, has 33 counts of late DMR and spelled report. Tacoma, permit number WAR 309612, has 43 violations, has had 1 quarter without violations, with 4 quarters of significant violations. A corrective action listed was an active treatment system is being implemented in September of this year to address the high concentrations of heavy metal pollutants on site.
Well, I can share that that's not our facilities.
Pacific Skills, that's
It's
not
not.
Pacific Skills.
We do, at what location?
Boise, Spokane, and Tacoma.
And this is within the last what?
I was on there today.
So-
Within the last, this was a 3-year compliance report on ECHO today. Boise, 27 counts of late DMR. Spokane, 33 counts of late DMR.
When you were on EPA ECHO, did it show blue for in compliance, or was it yellow and red?
Yellow, red, some blue, yellow, and red. Tacoma was all red.
Well, we'll do a fact check, but I have not got any notice in that regard.
So the public, you can go to ECHO, visit EPA website, and type in Pacific Still, and then we'll bring it all.
And I'd welcome folks to do that.
Okay, and we have a number of follow-up questions on traffic. So I do want to go to those online. There was a follow-up question on traffic asking about dust control during this winter. So wondering how you do dust control in the winter when watering down the roads is not recommended.
Pacific is committed to use mag chloride to the extent possible. And then areas that are disturbed will be reseeded with native grasses so that we'll be working in a small footprint so that we're managing the area that's actually open where dust can be. So it's a continual process of reseeding areas that get disturbed so that we don't have long-term dust issues.
So you have to close off the road when you imagine people off the road, so how do you plan on closing those roads for a period of time?
I think we probably could make fluoride that road in a couple of hours, so I don't see that as a
You
problem.
have to close off traffic, otherwise it destroys the bottom of the vehicles and that's money for the DOT.
Well, it's used statewide in a lot of areas, a lot of counties across the state have been pretty successful.
They do
So.
have signs, I've seen it in Wyoming, they close off the road for 24, 48 hours and let it dry before cars drive over it.
Just like this, I've already suggested it, but if the portion that's public road could be paved or something other than ag chloride, that would be great. If that's something.
So just repeating for those online, there was a request for a portion of the road to be paved. Okay, so then I have a number of questions that I'll go ahead, since you're still standing up here if you want to take more, and that way you don't have to keep hopping up and down. So the next question, we have a number of questions on why the location. So why the town of Shepherd and why not in the current landfill? If you're able to answer that.
Yeah, I think it's because of the geology, number one. Two is the overpass, the new overpass is probably number two. And what this is a repository. I mean, the goal is to remine it as part of reducing carbon footprint. What we have is already going to the Billings Regional Landfill. What we want to do is, when technology gets better, remining already happens on ASR, but it's going to get better and better 5, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
You guys already have an approved method by EPA to reuse this ASR into a non-waste pool. Why aren't you using that here?
That's a good question, and that's in South Dakota. And when markets will move in the way that will allow them to take our ASR, we will send it that direction. But markets move, and when they move, you can't always count on it being used as a substitute fuel. And to go back to the question on EPA ECHO, I heard a lot of information. One of them was effluent limits. And our recycling facilities are based on benchmarks, not effluent limits. So I can't dispel everything that was said a minute ago, but I can say I heard effluent limits, and we are not under effluent limits, so that was incorrect information.
I didn't say anything about effluent limits. And it's not a reliable, using this non-waste fuel is not a reliable way to recycle material. So how's there ever going to be a reliable way to run the recycle material?
There are a number of questions on the material that we'll get to in a minute. So the next series of questions we have is on fires and the fire department. So the nearest fire station is 10 plus miles away. How will that prevent a massive wildfire? And a follow-up is, how is the Shepherd Volunteer Fire Department benefiting? Which might not be a question any of us can answer, but if you're able to answer preventing of a massive wildfire.
So Pacific Steel met with the Shepherd Fire District and agreed to install a 30,000 gallon dry hydrant cistern at the intersection of Shepherd Acton Road and US Highway 87. And so that will be an asset not only to this facility, but to people that live in that area in the event of a wildfire.
So you're going to use dust suppression yourself?
Can I finish? And so ultimately, waste fires are best extinguished by dirt. That's always the first option, is to use the dirt that's available on site to extinguish the fire. The water is a backup, but Pacific has agreed to the request from the Shepherd Fire District to install a 30,000 gallon cistern at that intersection.
Why is it not on the site plans? Is it the farms?
It is on those boards over there,
But it's not on the EA.
and it's part of the application.
That's what I saw.
Okay, so then there's a number of questions we have on the material and reuse, and that, you know, what's the likelihood of that being able to be reused someday? Is that something you're able to respond to?
That's more of an operations question, Jason.
The question is that there's been conversations on reuse, and that will perhaps be someday, and what's the likelihood of it being reused or how will it be reused?
Yeah, so part of the ASR content, there's going to be minor amounts of metallics in there. Closer? Better? Okay, so part of the ASR, there's minor amounts of metallics that are still left in there that we currently cannot get out of there. So those metallics, coppers, some aluminum, some stainless steels. So as that technology comes forward in the coming years, that's what we want to be able to mine back out of our repository instead of it going to the buildings landfill where we don't have a chance to be able to get that back out. So there is minute amounts of metallics that are in that material that we want to get back out of there. That would be part of our plan as specific to be able to do that, to be able to reclaim that product into recycling.
Would that require a new permit to kind of start digging stuff up and disturbing versus compacting?
So the question that you had asked was, would that require a new permit? Because what's being licensed right now is the landfilling of the waste. Since mining that waste out is a much different operation, this would be the first time we've done this, but it would be something that would require we'd have to figure out what that permitting would look like, but it would require this process to repeat. So before that operation switched to mining that waste out, there would be public engagement at that point. And we'd have to issue another environmental assessment as well.
So what about environmental impact study?
There are a number of questions on the EA, so we will get to that in just a minute. We've had a number of similar kind of, I guess, questions around regulatory inspections and what those look like, and if there are self-inspections. So I don't know if we have a two-part question for you, Pacific and for DEQ.
Yeah, so for class 2 landfills, which is what this would be, you know, we do inspections, like I said earlier, we try to get to these facilities at least 3 to 4 times a year. And we'll go through records, we'll go and see what kind of, since this is a one waste stream, it'll be a little bit of an easier inspection, but what we're looking at the facility is making sure that all waste is where the waste needs to be. I'll typically, when I go and do an inspection myself, I'm driving up the roads in either direction, seeing if I'm seeing any litter anywhere. I'm looking at dust as they're doing operations. I'm noting if there's any dust that I need to be noting when I go and do the inspection. Oh, sorry, let me stay a little closer. Can you guys hear me okay in the corner, by the way? No? Can you hear me now? Okay. I'll just speak as loud as I can. I'm sorry if it sounds muffled. But like I said, I go up, kind of drive up around the facility, but see if I note any litter anywhere. I'll see if I note any dust. And once I get to the facility, I'll talk to the operator and let them know what I'm noticing. A lot of times, if I'm seeing litter, sometimes they're able to get people on site right away to get that taken care of. There have been times where I've gone to facilities, and by the time I've left, all of the things that I have noted were able to be remediated. If they have water, dust suppressant methods on site, they'll take a water truck. If I'm like, hey, roads are a little dusty, you should get some water on these and make sure that they're on top of that. Another way that we're able to verify the compliance is happening, like I noted earlier, our enforcement division. So if you guys do notice, and goes for any facility that we operate, I'll speak for Solid Waste Program. And this has happened before where people will call and say, hey, we're noticing a little bit of litter here, we're noticing dust, and then we can then follow up to the facility and make sure that they have prompt compliance and return back into compliance. So oftentimes if we are called by enforcement or the public regarding any operational issues, we try to get on site as soon as possible to get those remediated.
Yeah, and just to follow up with what DEQ said, follow up with what DEQ said, our job is to follow the rules, and regulations, and the law. And that's the bottom line. And I do want to say one last thing. I do want to say one thing here, because it's all about credibility. And there was a young lady here that alleged that we're getting violations in the state of Washington and the state of Idaho. And I'll say this for the media, for the cameras, for the print, Pacific Steel and Recycling has not received notice of violation from Idaho DEQ, Washington Department of Ecology, or EPA Region 10 in 5 years, and that's a fact. So I don't know where those allegations come from, but I'll stay on record with what I just said because it's my credibility, it's a company's credibility.
Okay, a follow-up question I think probably for DEQ. Is this site considered a large facility requiring the mentioned 3 to 4 DEQ visits per year?
This would be considered a larger facility. Yes, it's a class 2 management facility. That means group 2 waste. So yes, we would consider this a facility that we would want to visit multiple times a year. We do have what's called class 3 facilities, which are group 3 waste, which means inert. So it's concrete, it's wood waste or tires. And those facilities we typically visit once a year, twice if we know any violations. But typically they're bigger class 2 facilities. We try to visit those multiple times a year and more often if that's necessary.
Okay, and then another question for DEQ. So we only review applications that make sure they meet the requirements of the law. So based on the presentation, are we indicating that Pacific's application has met criteria, and unless something extraordinary happens, DEQ will likely approve this facility? Do you want to talk about the meet the comment process and requirements?
So as I noted during the application process, we do deem the application complete prior to drafting that environmental assessment. However, as part of the MEPA process, Montana Environmental Policy Act, it initiates public engagement. So sometimes in those public comment periods, which is why I encourage everyone to submit comments that are substantive and help us do a better review and help us note things that maybe we didn't note in the original assessment. And there are times, sometimes through the comment period, that we're able to get more information and make decisions that are appropriate for the project. So, like I said, if there are more comments that you guys have and questions after this presentation, after this Q&A, please, you still have another 9 days to submit more comments. And we review those very diligently, our technical team, and we also, if we need to reach out to other regulating agencies, we will do that as well to make sure that all of the T's are crossed and I's are dotted. So to the comments about MDT and people passing, that could be something that we as the agency can reach out to MDT directly and say, hey, could you do another visit to this and make sure that this is appropriate for this project, as we are starting to note a lot of concern with traffic around that intersection. So that's why I think this process is really, really valuable. I really value everyone's comments because it really helps us do a better job, because we can take what we're learning from this project and apply that to future applications. So.
Why was the public comment period short to 10 days instead of 30 on the application?
So originally, okay, sorry, for everyone online, the question was, why was the comment period 10 days versus 30? Comment period, and I know it says in our application 30 days, it's not in rule, it is discretionary. However, the reason that it was decided 10 days is because I know, personally I've talked to people about this project as early as late 2021. And I know that Pacific Steel has done a lot of public outreach in the last year and a half. And based on what was submitted with the application.
2 days before it was due, because somebody put the flyer on our mailbox, and we've lived at the same address for 45 years.
based on what was submitted with the application, and then once we published EA as a DEQ, as a regulating agency, we put that as a press release on October 20th that went into the Billings Gazette. And once we started to receive those comments saying that people hadn't heard it, a lot of interest in the project, that's why we decided to extend it another 30 days, which makes the full comment period 41 days at this point. So that's why we made that decision originally, and it's a good lesson learned for us moving forward to make sure that we have that adequate time for people to comment.
Okay, going to go to a question online regarding wildlife. I don't see a fence around the stormwater collection sites. How do they plan on preventing the wildlife from having access to the water that is run through the waste? So it's about wildlife, preventing wildlife from having access to the water that is run through the waste without fences around the stormwater collection.
The stormwater is water that's run off areas that are covered. And so we don't normally fence those facilities, but the entire original footprint or operational area will be fenced with a chain link fence. And so that will limit access to wildlife. But normally we don't fence stormwater ponds because they've only been, really mainly what they're controlling is sediment running off the site, not other contaminants. Our other water, the leachate pond, will be fenced. But the stormwater ponds, there's no requirement to fence them because it's really just runoff from dirt.
How do you separate those two waters?
The leachate is an underdrain system that's built on top of the liner system. So that's liquids that have passed through the waste. And so that water has had contact with waste. And so we treat that in a double line facility and evaporate it. The stormwater, we keep stormwater from running onto the site, so there's no run on to the waste areas. And then run off is from covered areas into ponds. And so our main thing we're trying to control there is sediment, so sediment doesn't leave the site.
What contaminants are you expecting in the leachate?
What contaminants are we expecting to leachate? This is the only ASR site that I've ever been involved in, so I can't answer that question.
Okay, so the next question we have is for Pacific. There's a question on why does the landfill no longer want this ASR? And a similar question about why it can't go to the Billings facility. If you're able to address that, if when there's a facility in Billings designated for this hazardous material, why is it?
No, the Billings Regional Landfill is happy to receive this material. They have for several years.
You guys don't want to pay for it.
So that's the answer. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. We can take our material to the Billings Regional Landfill. They're not saying no to us. In fact, I saw a report on the news last night where one of their operations persons said that he supported what we're trying to do for a repository for environmental stewardship, but our materials are still welcome at BRL.
Okay, a follow-up, similar question is if you will post a bond for reclamation in case you close down, sell, or foreclose.
There's a lady over here trying to speak.
I want to know why we don't just go to the city landfill, take a space there, do it right there, but it's all lined, it's all monitored, and why you don't do it right there.
Okay, so the follow-up question from the audience is why you're not using the Billings facility and lining it and doing it. It's already lined and doing it there.
So the city of Billings landfill, in order for the material to be recoverable, would have to build a separate repository for that. And that's not part of their master plan. They don't want to they're using their entire footprint to get rid of municipal solid waste generated by this community. So it wouldn't work to have a separate unit that they could get back into later to attempt to recover this material.
So there's a similar question, I guess, related to the City of Billings landfill is committed to landfill safety. Can you speak a little bit to your landfill safety?
Well, I just speak to safety in general. I mean, we have an operation and maintenance plan. We will follow exactly to the letter of the law what Great West Engineering has worked with us to produce. We went to Great West Engineering because they have done about 20 to 30 of these, and so we just follow what the experts and what the scientists say, and we're safe when we do it.
But they've never done an ASR facility.
Never done it, you said.
So another question, likely for Pacific here, is there's a number of questions on the other acres on that property, so we know you're only using a portion. Is there a business plan for those other acres? And there's another question on, does this open the door for shredding on site in the future? Looks like we have somebody coming down to answer that one.
We have no plans for shredding on the facility. Our plan is to lease the property for cattle, like I'm doing now.
Thank you. A follow-up question for Pacific. Will Pacific post a reclamation bond in case you close down, sell, or go broke? Maybe that's also a DEQ question.
Yes. Can you hear me? All Class 2 landfills, which this one is similar to, must, by law, post funds during their operations for closure of the site at any given time. And there are several financial means by which they can do that. Bond is one of them, letter of credit with a bank, trust. There's 13 different mechanisms that are legally on the books. Also, then, they have to put aside money during the operation of any landfill for post-closure care, at a minimum 30 years of post-closure monitoring of a facility. So it goes on for quite a long time. So yes, that's part of the state law that everybody has to follow, including Pacific.
Great. Kind of similar follow-up question. How long is each phase, and when is closure, and will vegetation have time to regrow between phases? If not, there will be 2 phased areas exposed.
As soon as areas reach final elevation, we'll take the topsoil that we're able to recover when we strip the site, place it on the final cover area, and seed it. That being said, in Montana, dryland seeding takes several years, and so, but it can be done successfully. So the most acreage that will be open at any one time is approximately 6 acres. And so the first 4 cells are approximately 6 acres each, and that will last 25 years, that footprint. So the reclamation and the seeding is an ongoing process at one of these facilities.
So some follow-up questions specifically on the ASR. Are you committed to only bringing ASR from or created at the Lockwood facility, or will it be shipped in from elsewhere? Only from the Lockwood facility. Okay, thank you. More questions on ASR. Is ASR a basically PFAS or forever chemical, and if so, are PFAS considered hazardous in any way? So the first question is ASR, and this is a question that we received online as well, does the ASR material have PFAS in it?
PFAS is in everything. It's in your cooking utensils, it's in your Gore-Tex coat, it's in your carpet, it's in your paint. It's everywhere. And so, is it in the ASR? Likely. But it is, I mean, one thing you got to think about is The material that we're not recycling at this point, you're contacting that every day you get in your car. It's the same material. It's the seats, it's the dash. And so we're not going to say that ASR doesn't have PFAS in it, but PFAS is part of our everyday life now, unfortunately.
Yeah, but we don't eat it. It get into our water.
Yeah, PFAS is an emerging contaminant that is in a lot of things. Why is ASR listed as hazardous in California and Minnesota and Oregon, but not in Montana? Who should this question go to?
The rules for hazardous waste in Montana are equal to the EPA rules. So that's why it's not considered hazardous here in the States. There are constituents that make it hazardous that EPA drives, and because of our rules match EPA's, that's why in this state it is not considered hazardous. We cannot regulate based on other states' regulations. We have to regulate as to how Montana is considering hazardous waste, which is EPA.
Do you want to speak in general to our requirements to follow state law for environmental assessments?
So as I stated before, the laws that we have in place are the laws that we can, those are the only laws that we can regulate. Obviously, you know, as you're saying, California, other states have laws that are a little bit more stringent than what federally is than what EPA puts forth. However, because the rules that we have are specific to EPA, that is how we can regulate that. And we do so diligently to make sure that it is protected with good health and the environment. That's why all of these measures are in place, to be sure that any contamination would be mitigated by the engineering of these facilities.
Sir, actually, Montana law in SB 0039 defines hazardous waste as anything that has 2 parts per million or more PCBs.
First, what I'll say too is, goodness, sorry. Please, what she said was SB 039 said anything that's 2 parts per million or more is considered hazardous. I believe that bill, and let's follow up, and I'll make sure to reach out to you specifically about this so I can consult with our hazardous waste supervisor as well. That was in regard to incinerators. So, but let's follow up together, and I'll make sure that we get a more robust answer back to you before the end of the night. Let's make sure we get your contact so we can follow up.
Okay, so there's a number of questions on the liner and groundwater. So, one question is: have dye tests been done to calculate contaminant drift via groundwater? And then there's a number of questions on the liner and keeping groundwater from being contaminated.
I will take a shot at the liner question, and then I'll have our hydrogeologist that's here tonight answer the groundwater question. The proposed lining system is an HDPE liner. It's a buried liner. Those liners last hundreds of years when they're not exposed to UVs. That's an important thing to understand, because a lot of people have seen pond liners on their ranch and they see what UVs do to them. This liner is buried. It doesn't have any, there's no UV degradation. Can I finish, ma'am, please?
When I looked up that particular question, by the way, it said they last for 20 to 25 years and they will undoubtedly erode.
That's an exposed liner to the sun. So
It was talking about from solid waste and trap. I just read it this afternoon. And it's from the EPA.
I've worked as a solid waste engineer for 35 years, so I don't prefer to get in an argument with you about lining systems. But I will go ahead and answer your question. So the lining system is built on a slope with the underdrain system, so you can't develop any head on top of the liner, because it all runs off the top of the liner to our leachate pond. And so we're going to put that HDPE liner on compacted areas of the native clay soils, which is a composite liner. And then under areas where liquid is concentrated, like in leachate trenches and sumps, we're adding a secondary geosynthetic clay liner, which is a bentonite blanket. So these are proven approaches to lining systems in this country, in the United States. And I'm going to pass the groundwater question on to Bruce.
But you've never designed a liner for ASR. And we don't know how the ASR is going to hold us if it with the liner, because we don't understand it.
Well, I've designed lining systems for the Billings landfill. They've been taking ASR for 8 or 9 years. So, yes, I have been involved.
My preference is to speak without the microphone unless you refer me to. You have to use the microphone? Okay, I'll speak loud anyway. Thank you for being here. My name is Bruce Lauerman. I'm a geologist, a hydrogeologist with Great West Engineering. I've been working on this project for the last 2+ years, and my focus has been on the geology and the groundwater in the area. I'll just cut to the chase. I think this site has excellent characteristics as a repository from a geologic standpoint, and I also think that there's very, very limited risk to contamination of any water on the site, which there's very little, and I see essentially no threat to neighboring wells, which are quite some distance. But let me explain that a little bit. So many of you live out here are aware that this is shale, much of it. The site sits on Bearpaw Shale. We think that's about 800 feet thick. And then below that is the Judith River Shale, another 200 to 300 feet thick of Judith River Shale, and then below that is the Claggett Shale. So we think there's 12 to 1,500 feet of shale and clays beneath this site. And so if you look at this gymnasium, I'm going to guess it's 30 feet maybe to the ceiling. We're talking about 40 to 50 times that distance of shale, which is not water bearing essentially. So there's that. It serves as a very excellent repository. Very little downward migration of any water or substances. The second thing is that by law we're required to look at first groundwater that's found. And so we drilled to the site originally 300 feet and found no water. When we did further evaluation, we drilled to 100-foot levels and slower, and we're sampling soils along the way, and we found some seams of water, maybe a foot or 2 foot thick, in the range of 30 to 50, 60 feet underground. I have no indication that these water-bearing zones are connected to one another. They're perched water, they're isolated instances of water, and it's extremely poor water quality. It would not be allowed to be, it does not meet human health standards for water. It does, beg pardon? It was not advised for stock to drink this water either. If you look at the recommendations from the Montana State University Extension Office, they would not recommend that livestock drink this water. It is extremely high in sulfates and in TDS, and is not suitable for livestock or humans. And it's also very sparse. These wells make less than a gallon a minute. In order for me to sample them, I have to pump them at a half a liter per minute or so, just to make sure I can collect a sample.
You say your liners don't leak that.
Excuse me, I'd just like to finish can I just finish the conversation for a second? So, our findings, and so we have 6 monitoring wells which will be in service and maintained in service, and there may be more required at some point, I don't know. But we've done about a year of monitoring now and looking at water quality, and we'll continue that for another 4 events, so probably another 6 to 8 months. And then once the landfill, if it's approved, goes into service, those wells will be monitored on I think a quarterly basis. Don't quote me on that, but at some frequency. Well, the Great West will collect the samples, and then the samples are sent to a certified laboratory here in Billings Energy Labs. So it's an important topic, your water supplies and your wells, and I hear you. It's an important topic to be on. I'm glad there's some questions, because I was sitting there, I was wondering, no one's going to ask about groundwater. I've been spending 2 years of my life working on groundwater in the area. But I feel pretty confident, I feel real confident, that there's no migration of any fluids to these shallow seams of poor quality water, and there's absolutely no potential for migration off-site into neighboring wells, which are few and far between. Yes, sir.
Did you sample the aquifer?
The question is, did we sample the aquifer? And I'd have to ask which aquifer we're speaking of.
One that runs from where you are to all of our wells.
I don't believe that the water that we're finding in the shallow subsurface is an aquifer. It doesn't yield economic qualities of water to any wells. I don't believe there's any connection between the water that we're finding on site and shallower wells, even shallower wells that are further off site.
The map showed that the aquifer extends to where you guys are going to put the site. And that's
How
what
far
looks
is
like
far?
our water.
I have not seen any map. If you have a map, I'd be happy to take a look at it.
It's on your site.
Because my well is 4.5 miles as the crow flies from the site.
Yes, ma'am.
And it is a shallow well.
Yes, ma'am.
And I want to know what can be done. This is asking with respect, okay?
Yes.
What can be done before the application is decided to guarantee people with wells that their aquifers are going to stay safe?
That's the work we're doing right now, ma'am. I said we've just been monitoring for the last year, every couple of months, checking water quality, looking if there's any connection between these different wells, which is hard to see. So I think these are perch zones of shallow water that do not extend off-site and will not allow for migration off-site. Absolutely.
Couple of months. So this will be decided before that report comes in, right?
I'm not sure on the timing. So we're halfway through our background monitoring. Will a decision may be made before the background monitoring is completed?
Before the operation can be approved, there has to be 4 background samples that are submitted. Sorry. Before it is approved, there has to be 4 background samples that are submitted before we can make a decision. So timing of that would determine our decision at that point.
We currently have 4 rounds of sampling, and we have plans for additional sampling.
But he only said he was halfway through it.
That's correct. We've done 4. If the DEQ requires 4 to make a decision, that's on their regulation. Our plans are to continue sampling in perpetuity.
But they've already decided, they've already gave you the 4 samples.
No, we've not shared any water quality with DEQ yet. These are bedrock aquifers here that I don't, if there's aquifers mapped in this area, it would likely be the Eagle sandstone, which underlies the Claggett shale. So at a depth of over 1,200 feet, I believe.
Well, there are several wells in our area that are in the Judy.
Yeah.
You're saying there's no possibility whatsoever, and you're not going to background sample to see what the starting point is for the contamination or lack of in our water, and you're never going to leak. These rocks are 100% impermeable. It's not going to leak to our stuff.
That's my understanding, yes, from investigating the site for 2 years.
And if it does,
I don't believe it will.
that's not going to help us. If it
The
does,
science that we've conducted so far would strongly suggest there's no vertical migration.
you haven't sampled the deep aquifers, so how do you know?
Because I'm sampling shallow wells that are on the property, and we drilled to over 300 feet on the property, and there's 1,200 feet of shale. Think 40 to 50 times taller than this building.
And it's got cracks in it and crevices in it, and there are places where water runs.
I'm glad you mentioned that because there was some question about faults on the property. I have a geologic map over there that was published by Montana Bureau of Mines and Geology. There's no listed, no shown, no inferred faults underneath this property. There are some that extend to the south, or southwest, northeast trending, but they don't show extending onto this property.
The map you have in your hand is the Montana Geological Survey.
Yes.
It shows that aquifer is under where you guys are working.
Which aquifer?
The one in your hand. You can see
These are deep aquifers, excuse me, well below 12 or 1,500 feet.
How do you know that you're not going to contaminate it if you don't do background sampling?
by the regular monitoring of the monitoring wells that we've installed. Because so,
if we don't contaminate and see no evidence of shallow groundwater being contaminated, how do we expect to find evidence of deeper water being contaminated? With all due respect, sir, I've been doing this for over 35 years. I'm a hydrogeologist. I'm a licensed hydrogeologist, a licensed geologist. I don't agree with you.
I'm a 33-year certified industrial hydrologist, and I've been through this a bunch of times, and your stone is going to leak.
We have to disagree on that.
So we have a number of additional groundwater questions. What contaminants were sampled in the extensive soil and groundwater background sampling? So what contaminants were sampled?
I wouldn't call them contaminants, I'd call them constituents. And so there were VOCs that were sampled, also general water chemistry. So it's a suite of samples required for DEQ approval. And it's pretty extensive, and we've seen no evidence of any volatile organic compounds that currently exist. And water quality is generally poor, but not what I would say contaminated. I just say it's generally poor water quality.
So the well that the livestock are fed on the site is over 500 feet deep, and that existed before Pacific purchased the property. So, you know, these little water seams that Bruce is talking about are like 50 feet deep. So there was a reason that when they drilled that well, they went to 500 feet to get something in stock to drink.
So we have a number of questions on the amount of water. So will there be access to enough water for what Pacific Steel needs, and where are you getting your water from?
Bob, I think you can speak to this as well. For fire protection, other operating water?
Just say dust control, whatever you need for operating.
I think that the main topic there is fire prevention and the cistern that Bob talked about, the 30,000 gallon cistern. I don't think there's a real need, correct me if I'm wrong, for other water on the site for operations.
Dust control.
I have to turn that to someone else. That's not my area of expertise. Good question.
But that was what the question was, the water that they're going to spray the dirt down, being dust, where they get down.
Thank you. Let's see if I can get someone else to answer that question, please. Dust suppression water or operation water on site?
You're going to have to speak up because we can't hear you on this end.
Do the best I can.
Pardon me, I can't hear you.
I can hear you.
I know you can hear me. I can stand out there and do all these questions.
If you want to move further into, that might help. Sorry, we have limited technology tonight.
Pacific Steel will likely have to haul water for dust control because there just really isn't any viable site or source on site.
So how are they going to mitigate dust suppression for the ASR material and soil itself? They don't talk about spraying the contents of the landfill itself, just the roads around it.
So will there be any dust suppression for the ASR material itself?
It's buried with
Daily cover.
soil.
Daily cover with soil.
It sounds like daily cover with soil and stuff. Trying to make sure we're having everybody online here as well. There's a question on preventing blown off materials to pollute the school grounds and what you'll be doing to help prevent that. Preventing, from your trucks, preventing blow off material getting into the school grounds. Yeah, trucks, and blow off from trucks.
Yeah, so the truck and trailer that we use for our facility, we have a truck with a light bottom trailer that has a covered tarp that goes over it every load. So it's a light bottom trailer with a side tarp that comes over the top of it for every load that leaves our facility in our truck.
Will that truck drive on those liners out there?
No. We'll have a cover on the liner system. The liner's not exposed.
Gotcha, so the other system has dirt on it first, so as Bob said, it's not exposed.
Plus driving on 87, 70 miles an hour? Can it handle that?
Yeah, after that, it's a tarp that's secured to the truck. So rolls right over the truck, rolls right off, it's got bars on there. It's not a sweeping tarp like we have for our in-dump trailers. It's not an in-dump trailer. It's a live bottom trailer, so similar to like a grain trailer. Similar, it's not a grain trailer, but similar, so it rolls over the top of it.
Similar to the wind question, how can Pacific Steel guarantee operations will be stopped during wind events? Do you want to speak to wind events and what that will look like?
Well, that's just going to be a matter of compliance, and we will have to, there should be everything we put in our operation and maintenance plan is overseen by DEQ, and everything we put in our plans, we have oversight on, and it's just a matter of compliance. And if someone sees the wind blowing and it's not stopped, just like the slide presentation says, you can call DEQ and say, hey, they're not doing what they said they were doing.
You're at a laundry station, that's a laundry station, and then telling the driver to stop what you've done. And he's qualified. You're only gonna have one on-site person, plus the driver from leaving you.
Would you have a suggestion on what we could do on that?
Yeah, there's no place to turn you out for a second laundry in that weigh station.
Well, maybe you could like a big tent or a shed. Back into.
No, I think that's some good comments, and I hope we got that written down.
Because I want to know what the community looks like when we're on after you guys are coming with that and up all the time. How do you get that?
That better not be happening.
So it sounds like they're open to some solutions. If you want to submit some comments, when you submit those comments with some of those solutions, it sounds like they're open to listening to those.
Mitigation information in the EA though, it's only in their application, so are you guys planning on adding that into the final EA or?
Do you want to talk about, we actually have another question on what's included in the EA. Do you want to talk about that a little?
Sure, that's why this comment period is so important. Obviously we review the application for completeness. That's a preliminary determination of completeness of the application, which then initiates this process. So if there are things that you want us to add to that environmental assessment to verify that it meets the minimum requirements, we will absolutely do that.
There's like a 16th of the information on the application in the EA, so you've got a long ways to go.
Well, there's a reason for that as well. We obviously don't want to overwhelm the public with an 800-page document, so we want to break it down as we want. And this is something that I'll ask you guys as well, as far as our initiation of the NEPA process, what do you want to see from the agency as far as the document that we put out for public comment? The reason that it's not an 813-page document is because that's overwhelming. Just objectively, that's a lot for people to sit through. So,
13 pages for this landfill, you need all that, you need all those details.
and that's great information for us to know, because we hear both sides of the coin. If it's too short, it's not enough information. If it's too much, then we're trying to hide the information. So we want to make sure that we're being robust and listening to the public. So our documents kind of ebb and flow with the feedback that we get, and it's really important that we get good, solid feedback. So if that's something that you guys see as necessary, please submit that to us. But there are things that we would add to the final EA if we start to know a lot of these themes in the comments, and we don't feel it was addressed properly in the EA. We are absolutely willing to add to that to the EA.
The EA doesn't say, the EA doesn't say about the contaminants and the measures analysis of the soil, but on the ASR itself, it doesn't say anything about what was found at all. That's what they probably call for things. What is in the material, we don't know.
And that's great. Sorry. Yes, and we've gotten a lot of those comments, and that's something that we are, as we start to review these comments, we'll be able to add a lot of the information that's in the application to then further verify that it meets constituents of the laws. So thank you. Please do continue to submit those comments because they're really important. It helps us do a much better job. So thank you.
So a question, how soon will this be up on your website so we can actually read it?
The EA is posted currently, correct?
The draft environmental assessment's posted right now, and the final, we have to sit through all of the public comments afterwards, so we gotta make sure that we're doing a diligent job to do that. We'd like to try to do that in 30 to 40 days. However, if we need more time, we'll work with the applicant so that we get sufficient time to actually sit through those comments. A lot have come in, and we don't want to be flippant with actually reviewing those and diving into those. So if it does go beyond that, we'll obviously keep everyone engaged. Everyone that's submitted comments so far is on our interested parties list. So if things do change and things start to develop, we'll make sure to keep everybody informed as we move forward.
What about DEQ's truck research on PFAS? What does that change between now and when you guys get the final EA out? Will it change the application or EA at all?
Currently, Montana doesn't have rules for PFAS. However, we are, within the agency, we work with, there's water quality, we've got air, energy, and mining, and we've got hazardous waste within our bureau, we've got hazardous waste. We do a lot of cross-program work. So if there are things that other programs are noting that we need to potentially make a different decision, then those things would be considered, absolutely.
PFAS program is out there on our table. You guys have ongoing research right now.
We do, yeah. PFAS is an emerging contaminant, and we do have staff that are working on that. But as he said, it goes across the agency. There's a variety of different ways that PFAS can be. So there is still work being done on that in studies. And EPA is still working on that as well.
When the trucks are done dumping and they're ready to leave, are they going to have to go through a wheel wash and a rinse down?
So the question for those online is, will the trucks, when they leave the site, have to go through a wheel wash? It's weird, evidently, when you turn that way, it doesn't work. When they leave the site, will they have to go through a wheel wash?
They should go through a whole rinse down because that stuff is going to be blowing and sticking to the trailer when they get on that highway.
Or rinsing. I think that kind of goes back to the truck coverings, but if you want to address.
We worried about like tires, or we worried about?
Yeah, you see trucks coming out of work areas. You say you're going to be using water for dust control, which is great, but then you're going to have all that stuff on the tires. You're going to have the residue on the trailer from the dumping and the wind picking it up into the wrong trailer. That truck should have to be rinsed totally, from front to back, and the wheel wash like gravel pits do before it gets on that highway.
And the belt underneath that whole trailer.
Our trailer's got to eject material out the back, so we won't drive over that material, so it's going to come out the back. We currently, where we're taking it right now, we don't have to wash those down leaving the building's landfill, I guess. So no, we won't have wash down every single load that we have, no.
Sir, I think he's trying to say if all the tires have mud on them and everything, if you go on like construction sites and whatnot, they drive through all the mud pits and whatnot. As soon as you hit that highway, it's going to put all that mud on the highway. It's going to create a way slick surface, and it's going to be a terrible driving hazard. So are you guys going to eliminate the mud and not do a dry down or a wet down? Or are you guys going to clean the trucks off before it's actually 87 so it doesn't create a visual hazard of slickness?
If it is primarily out there, it should be safe, or your vehicle, like, just sits to everywhere.
Yeah, we're definitely not going to be able to track that on the highway. Where we currently go, which I can tell you, I've delivered loads to the landfill in our truck and everything. It doesn't track out of there. Obviously, we're not going to be able to leave a giant blood stain coming out the highway. Not going to be practical for safety or any of the rest. So, yeah.
That's not obvious to us. We need that detail. You guys are going to do that follow-up.
Yes, so we will be doing that. Yeah, we'll have to, mitigate that without that.
Oil out there has a lot of clay.
Thank you. We have a number of questions to get through, so I'm going to go over here, and then we're going to try to get through the rest of these. Go ahead. So the question for those online is if DEQ has a way to verify the findings from experts from Pacific Steel.
So as part of the application submittal, we do have on staff, we have an engineer that works on staff that then does verification of all of that research. And they are also a hydrogeologist. We have a hydrogeologist on staff as well. And when we are, if there are times that we, within the program, aren't able to, answer a question, we have some questions on air quality or water quality, we do sometimes reach out to other parts of the agency to get a bigger perspective. So yes, we do a lot of verification within the program to make sure that what's been submitted is sound. On staff, we have one solid waste engineer, we have one hydrogeologist, and then we have one technical staff right now, and we're in the midst of trying to hire 2 more. Say that again?
The engineer did review this application?
Yes, our engineer did review this, and he also was a hydrogeologist, so he's got multiple backgrounds, and this was also reviewed. So we are special in that our engineer has a hydrogeology background, but we also have a hydrogeologist. That started after this application was submitted.
Okay, so we have a number of questions to get through, and I know it's getting late, so I'm just going to go ahead and go through a number of these questions. And I apologize for those online if it is hard to hear. We'll ask people to speak up. There's a question on a number of things going into the site. So electric vehicle cars are common. Will any battery material be in the ASR dumped on this site? So battery material from electric vehicles dumped on site.
The answer is no to that. We got material acceptance brochures. Every one of the vehicles that goes through is depleted.
If you want to stay here, I might have a few more questions for you. So there's a question on, will the cars be shredded on site?
No, absolutely not. This is like a postage stamp. It's going to be 24 acres over 25 years. That's the next 25 years. It's a repository. No shredder operations are planned or licensed for this site.
Okay, and then there's a question on paint from the cars. Is that hazardous that you're using? Or will the paint from the cars, I guess, go into the site? Is that hazardous?
And that's a good question, because that's why we do our analytics quarterly. And when you look at paint, you worry about lead, and we test for heat lift. So whatever constituents are there, it's not hazardous, and it's tested. And that's why Billings Regional Landfill has been accepting it. And in there, it's accepted as a non-hazard material throughout the entire country, aside maybe one state.
Several states, but also class 2 waste landfills, by definition, by Montana law, do say it can't have a hazardous material. So how can you say this is not going to be hazardous material, or that we can't accept hazardous material?
I think we've reviewed that a little bit, but go ahead.
It depends on the level present in that constituent, and that's something that we can do in EA, make sure that the hazardous waste acceptance criteria compared to the levels that EPA puts forward to determine the hazardous waste versus analytical, and do a compare contrast to make sure that that's very, very clear in our document.
What happens if this material does become hazardous waste in Montana laws?
We
We also have a similar question for that on ongoing monitoring if you find contaminants in groundwater, so if we can maybe combine those.
So if a waste is considered if a waste is considered hazardous, it has to be dealt with as a hazardous waste. There are a number of hazardous waste transporters in the state. Beartooth Environmental is one of those, would then have to take that to a facility out of the state. We have no hazardous waste facilities or hazardous waste landfills in the state that deal with that waste. So if an analytical result comes back and it is deemed hazardous per the laws that are in place for DEQ, that waste would have to be handled a certain way, manifested, and then taken and disposed of appropriately.
I'm sorry, so,
Okay,
so
then-
that still has 2 cells halfway through their plant, and then the law changes, and now it's hazardous waste.
If laws change, as laws evolve, we have to evolve with them. So if that is something that comes up and all of a sudden levels go down and now this waste is considered hazardous, we then have to implement those rules accordingly. So if in 5 years, and this is hypothetical, but if in 5 years this waste is considered hazardous, we then, as the regulating agency, need to manage it appropriately. So it would be diverted then as a hazardous waste and handled that way.
Okay, so next question. I'm sorry, we have so many questions to get through here, so let's get through them and see if we get. So there's questions on oil and lubricants in the cars, and if you'll be sampling for that, or how that will be treated for any oil-soaked material.
Yeah, so we do the very best job we can to keep the vehicles, but it's never going to be perfect, right? And that's why we do the analytical testing. And I can share with you, we've had years and years of analytical tests. We've gone to landfills with the hydrocarbon counts, and class 2 landfills, residential waste landfills say it's fine.
Okay, and then there are a number of questions on what happens if the water gets contaminated, what happens, like, what is the ongoing monitoring, what happens if the water gets contaminated, and some similar questions to that are if it is, and if there are any health effects to local neighbors, is there any sort of compensation for any of this to local neighbors? So that's kind of a multi-question. What kind of ongoing sampling will be done? What will you do if you find it's contaminated in the water? And is there any compensation for neighbors?
We don't anticipate anything like that. I mean, that's kind of a legal question, but I don't even ever see that even coming down the road. If you do the right things happen. And we do the very best job we can to have a material in a repository that we can mine out. And it's for environmental stewardship, it's for sustainability, it's for the future. It's a postage stamp on 320 acres. But if something ever egregious happens, that's why companies go out of business. But Pacific has been in business for over 100 years. Can you? And I love the passion. Can you plan for what?
She just booked the question for contaminated groundwater.
What we do is we count on the engineers that we hire where that's not going to be an issue. So, Annalise, you're absolutely right. We don't have a plan for that because we don't expect it at all.
That's not the right answer. You guys don't know anything about this ASR material. The engineers have never designed this ASR material. I don't understand why that's not.
So in addition to the engineers that work with them on sampling and analysis, those sampling analysis results come to DEQ as well, and our hydrogeologist reviews those. And if there are indicators that something is moving in a direction, if there's an increase in any of those constituents, we would then follow up with corrective action. As I'm not a hydrogeologist, I can't speak to those specifics. However, there are a number of things outlined in our rules that outline the path forward for any sort of corrective action that would take place if there were to be any sort of contamination, and that is outlined specifically in our administrative rules in Montana.
DEQ has a plan that still doesn't. Just to clarify.
Well, so our rules inform the application, so anything that is outlined in our rules need to be followed to the T. So if there's something that's noted, we then implement that as a requirement. You know, we would then initiate the corrective action measures that are outlined in our administrative rules for groundwater monitoring.
How does this even
I have a question about the term shred. How many vehicles are shredded at your facility, say from your Tacoma facility?
I'm not sure we have anybody here to be able to speak to that for our different plans. Okay.
Yeah, it comes from old.
Your question was about Tacoma?
Well, about how many vehicles do they send you guys to shred?
Tacoma sends 0. Tacoma is just,
According to the website.
I can tell you, I work there. We don't send any vehicles. We don't send any vehicles from Tacoma. That's
Okay, how about any other out-of-state places?
So we pull from our branches, our other branches in the region. So we pull recycled material from them. We actually pull material from other landfills actually. We process their materials, their metals through our shredding facility. So depending on market, how busy we are right now, we're not very busy. Last couple of years when markets were a lot higher, we could shred a lot of tons through our facility, and all the metals and all the recyclables out of them.
So you do get stuff from out-of-state?
Yes, we have branches out of the
They
state.
just said that you guys weren't getting anything except from Lockwood.
No, they said they were taking the ASR from other facilities.
Okay, yeah, so.
That was what the traffic, they said they weren't taking loans from anywhere but Lockwood.
Yes, all the ASR will come out of our Lockwood facility. That's part of our shredding facility. So We're taking material from other branches in our company that's shipped to us. We take for other customers that ship to us, but all the material is coming from our Lockwood facility. So if our other facilities, for their trash, they'll go to their local landfill for their trash. This ASR is what's left over after we recycle their material.
But it's not just cars. I just recently found out it's also appliances. And so as markets change, the concentration and the ASR itself can change based on what you guys are taking from other facilities.
We always have cars, appliances, light gauge equipment, like we shred farm equipment goes in there. Obviously not much ASR coming off farm equipment kind of stuff. It's all a mixture of household appliances, cars, like anything lighter gauge materials what we are able to shred.
Anywhere in the DA, they say household appliances and items. So that's news to me. I just heard that from somewhere else.
Also, is it sampled at your Lockwood facility, or is it going to be sampled out here in Shepherd? Monitoring?
Groundwater monitoring?
No, the sample.
All of the ASR, that will be done in Lockwood. But I'd like to expand on a point of this young lady and the gentleman here. And I think there may be some confusion on different sites, because that was the second time I heard Tacoma. One was relayed to EPA ECHO and the website and all that. It may be possible that we're looking at different sites, different Pacifics.
If you want to send me your email address, I'd be more than happy to send it.
Absolutely. And within the next day or two, we're going to go through each one of those things. We've got 46 stars in the sky. The only thing that would stand out would be affluent limits, and we're benchmarking. And sometimes the EPA portal confuses that, but we can go through every step. We haven't had an NOV in one state in 5 years.
I screenshotted everything, so I'd be more than happy to share that with you.
Sounds good. I want to make sure we get through these questions because I know you all submitted these and we want to make sure we get to all of them. So there's a number of questions on what will the repository buildings look like, and is there a maintenance building on site, and how many buildings are there? Can anybody speak to the number of buildings on site and what those will look like?
One building, maintenance shop, that's it.
One building, maintenance shop.
Metal-sided building with a metal roof.
Okay, one building, maintenance shop, and that's it. So the next questions we have are on a number of wildlife. So does livestock in the area close to the site have to be relocated is a question. Does anybody need to relocate their wildlife? I'm seeing no. Okay. Next question we have on wildlife. Since ASR is classified in Montana as now hazardous, which I think we can respond to that it's not, what does the landowner do when the dust floats on, but this is the question, what does the landowner do when the dust floats on the surface and cattle ingest it? So if they see anything floating on the surface for their cattle, any suggestions on that? Does anybody want to address that?
If that is happening, that is when our enforcement is part of the process. So they're doing daily checks, making sure that litter is being controlled. Some of that litter control mechanisms that are just kind of on the ground, something that you guys can see. There's litter screens that are on the working face, so depending on which direction, they might move those litter screens and make sure that that waste stays within the waste area. That is something we look at when we go and do these inspections. Also, like I said, if we're noting a lot of, if we start to note this material is not staying where it needs to be, we then ask that operations are adjusted, which could include watering that material down as it's being put onto the ground to make sure that it doesn't go anywhere. So that's how I would answer that. But also, please submit those comments as well. I know we've gotten some on wildlife, and I want to make sure that we get as much as we can so that we can diligently dig into those and be able to answer those for you.
The next question is on the number of people working on site. So the application states 1 to 2 people, and they're wondering if it's possible for 2 people to fulfill the daily tasks. We've got somebody from operations coming to answer that one.
Yes, with 2 people, we'll be able to fulfill the daily tasks. 2 people is not counting truck driver, so 2 people on site.
Will be monitoring the wind station you guys are gonna put up?
When?
Yeah, like the two people that are on site will be monitoring that.
That would be our supervisor, manager of the site, would be the one monitoring that.
You'll be on site or remotely monitoring it or?
No, we'll have 2 people on site. 2 people will be on site, so
Yeah, that one of those two people monitoring it.
yes, or both of them. Yeah, 2. I mean, it'd be there that either one can
I
monitor.
hope so, that's just not the telephone, I don't.
Yes,
that's-
so no, to answer your question, yes, either one will be able to monitor, when
And they will have the
active.
authority to shut down operations.
Will they what?
They will have the authority to shut down operations at any time.
Yes, I oversee the buildings recycling facilities, so absolutely they'll be able to shut that down.
What happens?
They will, yes.
What happens when the wind exceeds your limits 5, 6 days out of the week, 4, 5, 6 hours a day? Are you going to disregard it? Are you going to shut it down? 'Cause I think you guys really realize the strength of the wind out here and how constant it is.
Close to Livingston.
All the time.
That's one of ours, so yes, we will have to shut it down if it's there for 5 or 6 days.
Okay, so there's a number of comments on wildlife, and maybe DEQ can answer this. Who concluded that transient wildlife do not venture into agricultural land, and how long did FWP spend on the property to make the decision about sage grouse? Yeah, and if you could address sage grouse.
So the Sage Grouse Preservation Office has designations of general areas, connectivity areas, and that's a map that is put out by the Sage Grouse Preservation Office. The applicant has to reach out to the Sage Grouse Preservation Office for that. All of their processes as to how they, add it to the stewardship account or put together a mitigation plan. That the requirement is that for DEQ is that they reach out to the Sage Grouse Preservation Office and work out those details. In this comment period, however, the Sage Grouse Preservation Office did reach out to us and actually helped to inform us a little bit more as to what they want to see in a submitted application. So that's something that now I can then be able to share with the rest of the agency when it comes to sage grouse specifically. And that was submitted, the letter with the mitigation plan and the stewardship account contribution was submitted last week, and that'll be something that I can add to the application and put online, so that way everybody can see that.
So there is effects of sage grouse habitat is why it takes, because they are effects of habitat, but they are.
Correct. That's the whole thing of that's the whole purpose of the Sage Grouse Preservation Office. How they mitigate, how they determine where funds go, and how they determine those funds is outlined by the Sage Grouse Preservation Office, and is not something the DEQ oversees, but it is a requirement of the application that they engage with the Sage Grouse Preservation Office.
Say that again? There are more wildlife than just sage grouse out there. We got coyotes, prairie dogs, birds.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as I had mentioned before, this process doesn't allow us to deny the application if it doesn't meet if it meets the number of requirements. Wildlife is a consideration. However, we also address, if there's ample amount of space around the facility, because that's, and I'll speak to my own personal experience. I live across the street from now 40 new homes up in the North Hills of Helena. And I was, I had to engage in the public comment period for that facility, or for that subdivision. I used to have elk and antelope going through there. I see them still, but they just go into a different field. And unfortunately, they cross their T's and dot their I's. And that's just how that, how that played out. But of that 320 acres, there's 90 that would be active. And in my experience at landfills, I see wildlife at landfills all the time. As they were saying, 6 acres at a time might be open, but I've seen, for instance, deer, on the road going up to the landfill, in the fields surrounding the landfill as well. So,
What happens to the tires on this vehicle? Do they shred them right in with the other metal?
There's no shredding on site. Is that correct? No shredding on site? Oh, at the facility?
What?
Shredding tires at the facility? Yes, they're shredded on the vehicles, yes. Okay, so we have a number of questions on how deep are the pits, how high will the stockpile be, and how will soil erosion from rain, wind, and daily use affect the buried materials? If somebody's able to address that.
tires are considered class 3, so at a class 2 landfill, a class 2 landfill can take group 2, group 3, and group 4 waste. If it's a class 3 landfill, they can only take class 3 or group 3 waste. And if it's a class 4 landfill, they can take group 3 and group 4 waste. So group 2 waste, I'll just to bullet point it. Group 2 is just your normal bag of garbage in your kitchen. Class 3, or group 3 waste is tires, concrete, or anything inert. So unpainted, wood, untreated concrete, anything that's inert. And then class 4 waste is construction demolition waste. So anything you would see from the demolition. So at a class 2 landfill, you can accept group 3 and group 4 waste as well as group 2 waste.
Thank you for answering.
How deep are the pits? How high will the stockpile be? And how will soil erosion from rain, wind, and daily use affect your
The cell excavations are on average about 15 to 20 feet deep. And the ultimate height of the facility is about 40 feet above grade. Slopes will be reclaimed as I discussed earlier. When we final cover them and put the topsoil back on that we stripped, they'll be reseeded with native grasses. And that's how we control erosion, is reestablishing vegetation.
Where are the leach fields located?
The leachate pond is shown, that will move as we develop individual cells. That board over there on the left, that will work for the first 4 cells of the first 25 years. And then we'll have to look at building another one at that point.
Okay, so some follow-up questions for specifically Pacific, it looks like. How many sites do you have in Montana, and how long have they been used and closed? And then we have a groundwater question to follow up on that in terms of, so how many sites in Montana, and how long have they been used and closed?
Yeah, so we have several facilities in Montana. I want to say Marshall's at 13 or... And we're
Recycling
close to-
facilities or steel facilities? Or
Yeah.
total?
Yeah.
That we're burying the material.
Oh, it's with the, that would have, bring in materials. I think we've got 8.
Kalispell, Missoula, Helena, Butte, Bozeman, Great Falls, Havre, and Billings.
10.
So with that, then, next question in line up there is going to be, it's in your name, Pacific Steel and Recycling. If we're placing this material in the ground with the theory of one day recycling it when technology permits, what is Pacific Steel doing? How much skin in the game do they have? It is a profitable product, or you wouldn't be looking to remine it. In advancing the technology. What's your participation in progressing this along? If we have 9 facilities in Montana, 13 facilities in Montana, 9 different states, I think, 8 or 9, 46 places, we're burying this material. What are you guys doing, and where is science at, where's technology at, to actually get this out of the ground? How much investment do you have? This is a business decision.
Yeah. So there has been remining of ASR for, I think, a couple of decades, but it just keeps getting better and better. And so what's our skin in the game? Our skin in the game is to go back and get it. I mean, we want to go back and get it. That's our skin in the game.
What's your investment currently to get the technology where it needs to be? Is this going to be buried for 20, 30, 50, 100 year linings? When's it coming out of the ground?
Yeah. Well, I'm going
What's
to try
your push
to...
for the advancement is the question.
Yeah.
What is the difference with a layer of dirt every single day?
Yeah. Go ahead, Kit.
I just want to say, you know, I think the bottom line is, I don't want to caution you to go out there. It's like 250 bucks a truck to get on this.
That is a factor.
So, like I said out there, this is a business decision. So, I don't know, maybe down the road with this, but how, that stuff would have to be different gold to get across the head. Go out there, get that back up, take all that dirt out there, then truck it out wherever the heck you need to truck it. And that stuff would have to be worked on a lot of. So
Our
I
opinion.
don't see that happening. I think the bottom line is we just got some land that actually needs to come
feeling is very illegal.
Your taxes are $167 a year on that place.
And our home insurance is gonna go up.
Okay, so we have a few more questions here. What studies were used to establish that land values are not diminished by having solid waste facilities in the area? That is cited in the EA, the environmental assessment that's on the website. So, next question is, why does Pacific Steel only have to submit semi-annual groundwater sampling when Hidden Lake has to submit monthly? So the question is, on semi-annual groundwater samples when Hidden Lake has to submit monthly results. Is Hidden Lake a public water supply? What do you refer
We're on an
to?
aquifer.
Aquifer?
Rattlesnake Reservoir.
Okay, but is it a public water supply you're
Yes.
heading to?
Yes.
Okay, so do you want to talk about the difference between public water supply?
Public, can you guys hear me? If I talk loud, hold it close. Okay, I haven't introduced myself yet. I'm Amy Steinmetz with DEQ, and there are different regulations for public water supplies where people are drinking the water. The frequency, and Great West may want to talk about this a little bit because they do public water supplies, but the frequency is different because people are drinking that water, and that's the difference.
Okay, and then there's a question, I don't know who will answer this. I've saved some of the kind of questions I don't know who will go to until the end. How will this affect the law enforcement shooting range? Does anybody know what that is? Or does anybody want to expand on that question, on what that means? Okay, so there's a shooting range east a half mile, is that what you said? Okay. Okay. But that's not on your property, so there would be no impact? Okay. All right, and then the next, oh, well, we have, the question was specifically about the studies, but do you have a specific question about property values?
Yeah, what's it gonna do to them?
What's it going to do to the property values? Do you want to address that again? I know you covered that in your presentation.
It is outlined in the EA, however, like I stated before, my phone's getting tired. Like I stated before, the research really speaks more to hazardous waste and nuclear facilities. What we've seen in Helena, and I'll speak to Helena specifically, there's a subdivision right over the hill from our county landfill in Lewis and Clark County. And I know for a fact a lot of those houses have been, and actually some have actually been built in the last 3 years, and it has not affected those property values. It's not consistent across the board. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. We have someone in DEQ that actually has worked with us to do some of that research, and it's something we can revisit as we all know the markets have been very volatile in the last few years. So it's something we can revisit as part of this public comment period. I know that's come up in the comment period a lot so far. So it's something that I can have follow up with some of the other people at DEQ that have a little bit more of a pulse on that. It's a class 2 solid waste management facility. So that's essentially how we would go about that. And I'll speak to just the uniqueness of this facility is that it is one waste stream, which in a lot of ways is a lot easier to manage both as an operator and as a regulator. We know what's going into the facility, as opposed to a landfill. They could pull stuff out from underneath the sink, which you can make a lot of stuff with stuff underneath your sink. And it's a little bit less of a consistent waste stream at a normal class 2 facility. Billings, Kalispell, Missoula, Helena. But with this facility, we have the luxury of being able to know exactly what's going in there. We're getting analytical on this specific waste stream on a regular basis to make sure that it doesn't hit hazardous levels. And as noted before, if rules change, we have to change with it. So if it's determined at one point that it's now a hazardous waste, we then deal with it as a hazardous waste, and now you have to close your facility. So that's how we would deal with that.
Well, I think we can all agree that we wouldn't buy houses next to a landfill. We wouldn't go out looking for them and say, yeah, it's a good place to live, sure.
Absolutely, but and like I said, this is just one example. You lose in Clark County landfill. There was, I want to say, about 10 houses that were built near the landfill. City of Billings landfill there, right above the landfill. There's a whole subdivision that was built up there right after many years after the landfill was built there. So it does happen, and in urban areas, especially when there's a lot of people in a smaller space, there are many, many homes that are being built every day near these landfills. But that's why, DEQ's here. We want to make sure that we're making sure that these operations are staying up to stuff with the rules. That's why we want people to engage with enforcement if there are things that are not being operated within the rule set. And then we can get those mitigated as best as possible.
These houses are getting built, but what do they sell them for, and are they on wells? You don't know a lot of them there, especially.
A lot of and I'll speak to Helena, a lot of those homes are on wells. But like I said, as part of this comment period, I'll make sure to get, I'll engage with some of the people at DEQ that might have a little bit more of a pulse on what's going on with property values and speak to some of that research that's being done on property values as well.
So once the research comes out and says, yes, it will increase your property value more than you guys said in the PA, then what do you guys do? Just keep building it?
So as I said before, MIPA is a disclosure document. So there's not really, property value is not something that's evaluated in our administrative rules. So there's nothing in our administrative rules as a regulating agency that says if property values go down, we have to deny the permit. So it would be more of a disclosure of, as opposed to a denial because of, if that makes sense.
Okay, so we have a few more questions online. There's a question on if the water monitoring is going to be public information, such as results for... Yes. Okay, yep, the answer is yes. And then the last question I'm seeing online is if hours of operation are from 8 to 5, what happens when the wind picks up after hours? How is on-site responsible to make sure things are covered and dust is kept from blowing on off-site overnight?
Part of our daily operations is going to be that dirt covenant's going to cover them. So before our employees go home for the day, they'll have that. Sorry. So part of our operations for the daily is going to be the dirt cover that's going to go over it, compaction, dirt cover, compaction again. So before operations for that day are done, those events will happen before the close of the day.
How much cover do you put on?
6 inches.
6 inches.
So will that 6 inches be wet?
Will be wet?
Will be watered down so it doesn't blow?
Otherwise, it's going to blow all over.
Because the soil out here just blows.
Compacted. So it's be over and compacted.
So no water.
So no water.
I just have a facilities question. Is there fuel on site? I've got a diesel generator, compactor. Is there fuel on site, and how is that going to be monitored?
There'll be a fuel tank for our equipment. What's that? Designated 1,000 gallons probably, something. Yeah, like we'll follow those. What's that? Still? So like our facility that we have in Lockwood, you have the concrete barrier around it. So you have tanks themselves have a double wall containment, then you have another containment that goes around those for the spills. So same procedures, won't have near as much fuel as our Lockwood facility because we have so many pieces of equipment out there, but same procedures and measures will be followed out there as well.
And what if there's a spill?
When we have spills, they're contained in those tanks and contained in our containment.
Still recycling has had 3 fires, one Kalispell and Lockwood. When that happens within the last 5 years, every resident in Shepherd, Montana, their homeowners will go up. Are you planning on paying all of our homeowners that happened in Billings when the hailstorm went out? So, you plan on paying all of our homeowners when that comes up?
Bob?
What's the question?
Can you repeat your question?
Can you repeat the question, Mike, actually? So,
Those on my
Homeowners insurance if there's a fire.
That's a Pacific Steel question.
Pacific Steel has had fires in Helena, Lockwood, and Kalispell.
So what is the question?
When that happens, this history repeats itself. What happens is all of our insurance, our homeowners insurance, will go up if this goes in because you guys have high insurance because of your high fires. High risk.
Maybe
high risk.
the fire chief still here? Maybe he can answer that.
I'm not, this is true. I called the insurance, 4 insurance agencies, because Pacific Steel has high risk. When or if this goes in, it will make every resident's home insurance rates go up because Pacific Steel will now be within Shepherd's districts. So home insurance will go up because your company has had 3 fires. Are you going to pay all of our home insurance when they go up?
Yeah, I can't answer that question.
Yeah, you can. It's a flat no.
I had a question. So just so I can get it straight, this is the first ASR repository that DEQ has worked with in Montana, correct? And this is the first ASR repository that Mountain West has worked with in Montana?
Great West, yeah.
Okay. And it's the first ASR repository that Pacific has built in Montana. So we're a first, right?
Correct.
Okay.
So for your guinea pigs.
Question was if this is the first in Montana, and that's correct. There's a question on here, what happens when I hit a piece of debris or on US Highway, is that 87? Will they cover damages or can I sue? You want to talk about damages? Okay, trailers are covered, saying there's no debris leaving. Are you talking about debris leaving the site? Like the physical site? Whose question is this? Do you want to expand?
I don't know, I get the question, it wasn't mine, but if debris blows off the site and causes damage, who's responsible?
Pacific owns the site, so they'd be responsible.
So you will pay for all damages.
Pacific would be responsible for anything that costs.
And then who
Answer is
cleans up that
Pacific.
garbage that blows off site?
Pacific's facility.
So it blows onto private property, you're just gonna go on private property and clean it up?
If you require, or if that happens, and you request us to clean it up, like, yes, as Bob said, it's our facility, so yes.
And I guess the next question is the sheriff's department, will there be fines for it if it blows off or littering? I'll
What
take
was
your,
the follow-up question? I can't hear very well. What?
when or if the debris blows off, it's considered littering. Will there be fines against Pacific Steel for littering?
You want to talk about
Guess that would be more for the sheriff's department as well.
There might be at a local level, DEQ wouldn't issue fines for simply, DEQ wouldn't issue fines simply for littering. Through our enforcement program, if there's a submittal or a complaint that's filed and it's determined that that reaches a certain capacity, then there could be fines implemented by our enforcement division. At a local level, that would have to be spoken about with the local law enforcement.
Okay, we have one comment or solution, I guess, suggestion, and then one more question in here. Question on the 6 inches of dirt cover. If that's sufficient in a high wind area and it could be blown off in a matter of hours out there, then what's the solution if you find that that's blowing off those 6 inches of cover?
Reapply.
Reapply, okay. And then there's a last just comment kind of question. If this pushes through, will you pay Shepherd 2% gross income and Shepherd General Fund or school for improvements?
Yeah, that's not our taxes.
I would just say, I'll say to that, I don't know. I'm not operations responsible.
Okay, so we finished our online questions and our notepad. So now if there is any additional questions, please raise your hand one at a time so we can make sure people online here, and you've had yours raised over there.
I just want to say, this doesn't look to me like progress. This looks to me like we're going backwards. Used to be landfills all over the place, and they held them down and one time. For all these years, now here we go. And what the people are doing down here is going backwards. So that's looks to me like that's what we're going.
Any questions? Go ahead.
Have there been any studies that have been submitted to the DEQ in regards to how far ASR dust is broadcast in 10 mile an hour, 20 mile an hour, 30 mile an hour that you can actually base, you know, your information on, like actual studies of ASR dust and its area that it's broadcast in those types of environments?
So for those online, the question is if there's any studies done on ASR dust and how far it broadcasts.
Nothing specific has been submitted to DEQ, but like I said, as far as this comment period, it's something we can dig into and make sure that we respond to.
Okay.
Let's go with the gentleman in the hat. No?
I have not heard anything said about what are you going to do when, because all these contaminants that are in this stuff that they're bringing out here is going to be cumulative. It's going to continue to grow, and what are you going to do when it gets to the levels that is totally untenable to any form?
I'm not sure what the question is. Cumulative.
How are you going to manage that? Because are you just going to create a new Superfund site?
Yes. You guys don't know how these contaminants interact with concentrated waste, so how will you do?
Exactly.
I'm not quite sure what the question is.
Sorry, I'm going to try to answer your question. So are you saying, you know, because this is a funneled waste, so it's one waste stream, that, you know, the concentrations of these in one space is going to be, so, and I'll speak to that a little bit, but like I said, please submit that. It's something that we can continue to dig into. However, when something's determined non-hazardous or has a determination, it doesn't then, you know, once it's in the landfill, that level stays where it's at. So if we are only accepting levels that are at a certain level, it's never going to just increase in hazardous constituents. It's not going to become more toxic or more ignitable or more of, those hazardous characteristics won't increase as a result of funneling those to one space. However, if that's not already been submitted, please submit that as a comment. And that's something that we can dig a little bit more into as far as ASR as a single waste stream. And maybe some other things we can consider, since, like you said, this is the first of its kind. And there are things that we've never had to evaluate before. So that it's very valuable that you add those to our consideration, and so that we can dig into those things and make a sound decision as a regulating agency.
How high is this going to be? Already answered.
I think there was 40 feet? 40 feet.
Above the ground?
Above the ground? Yes.
How are you going to hold the dirt there? 40 feet up in the air, how do you take structure?
Go ahead, sir.
This is what I see happening. I agree with this gal. It's a business decision. It's going to save you money. But when that sun beats on the ground, that dust is just going to blow right at me, right at our little community here with our homes and that. You're not going to be able to stop the dirt, bits of foam. I'm going to get bits of foam and crap all over the land and that. And breathing all that crap. There's no way you can stop changing the direction of that wind. You guys don't know the wind out there. It's going to just change and blow that shit here. If you're breathing that shit, I can see people driving down the gravel side of Shepherd Action towards that. And I can see that dust. It just, that sun's going to beat that summer ground. I'm not going to be able to take that shit, you know.
Yeah, please submit comments regarding the wind and the management of that.
Does the DEQ realize that what we're saying right now, including this school and the property all the way around it, is classified as the Shepherd School Response Site? addressing your question about a Superfund site. Okay? A Superfund site may not be a response site. This area is a response site listed by the DEQ and the state because of contaminants that were placed in the ground and in the groundwater probably long before most of us were even born. And now we're living with it. My kids drank this water. The teachers at the school drank this water. I can read in your remediation for the DEQ the list of what is present in the groundwater at this school, and it would scare you to death. So what's to say 50, 60, 70 years from now, there is a guarantee that what is happening east of here will not interfere with the health of the people of our community? Is there a guarantee?
So the question is there a guarantee that it won't interfere with the health of the community? And also, it sounds like a question about state, or it doesn't sound like federal, so
Well, I'm just wondering if the DEQ realizes that where we're at right now is a Superfund site, or a response site for sure.
If you have not submitted that as a comment, please do. And that's something that we can do. We can reach out to our Superfund folks in DEQ. And part of the EA, it's called the cumulative effects piece of our environmental assessment. If that's something that we didn't know. So that's something we can then reach out to them and see how this project might affect the cumulative impacts of this project. So thank you for bringing that up. But please make sure that that's memorialized in our public comment period so that we can take that and do some research on that and reach out to our cohorts at DEQ to discuss that.
Yeah, I just want to say one thing on the compliance thing again. There's a saying, an error doesn't become a mistake until you refuse to fix it. I want to clarify something I said earlier on the compliance stuff. Up until 2023, calendar year 2023, the company had gone 80 straight months without an environmental violation in the 9 states. In 46 in the 40, if I may finish, please. In the 46 facilities in 9 states. In 2023, we have received 2 administrative violations, no penalties in our 9 states. But previous to 23, we've gone 80 straight months. Now, I did look up on EPA ECHO, and I do see what you're saying. That is effluent. That's effluent. That's benchmark. That's an error. And I can show you the permit, and they will take that off because we're under benchmark. We're not under effluent limits. That information is incorrect.
Any other questions?
You seem very upset that
In general?
you guys brought up ECHO. This is the second time that I've heard ECHO in the last few weeks. So we went on ECHO and we see this, and then we're very upset with it. I can understand why. Absolutely. You can't brag about how great you are on the website and then look at it and that's what we're seeing. So yeah, if I was in Pacific still, I would 100% be.
If you go to 44 out of 46, you'll see that looks good. When you go there in 2 weeks, you'll see that looks good too. That's a portal mistake. We're under benchmark. We're not under effluent limits.
Any other questions? Raise your hand. Okay, we'll go in the back and then right in front. Yep, you.
What does the process look like to get a discharge, your discharge permit? You guys aren't getting that until after the draft.
What does the process look like for discharge? Yeah, that's in our Water Protection Bureau, and so that is a separate program from DEQ. We don't have anybody here from that program tonight, but there is a specific process that they go through for that.
The discharge permit comes before the ZBA, correct?
So no, we don't typically go after a discharge permit until we have a license. And so that's done during the design phase. So this would fall under an industrial permit. And they'll be required to provide a surface water pollution prevention plan, and they will have a discharge permit. That process is prescribed by the DEQ and it will be followed.
So you plan what to do with the discharge after you get your license for the facility? That is completely backwards.
It's pretty standard because the stormwater prevention permit is actually when you're starting to disturb land and number of land acres. So that's a standard process through DEQ. It's part of the construction process. Go ahead.
The questions that were asked today that you are not able to answer, could we get a season response from
about response to comments.
I was actually just talking to about how we might be able to answer some of the questions. Sorry, it's not something we typically do, but I'm trying to kind of think outside of the box and just make sure that everyone's being engaged. An example would be, hazardous waste we can maybe send, and everyone that's on the IP list. And if you wrote your name at the entrance, please make sure your email's on there. Email's just the easiest way we can get a hold of people. So once we have that, you're just added to that list. So I'm thinking, and obviously I want to make sure that we're focusing on being able to respond to the comments without also overwhelming staff and all of that. But what I think we can do is, throughout, as we're kind of answering some of those comments, maybe slowly but surely responding to everybody and saying, hey, here's some hazardous waste determinations, here's some other things regarding groundwater. You were going to come to me about a specific question that's blanking in my mind right now because I'm so in front of everyone. Yes, thank you. So anything that you didn't get answered, please come up to me up here. I'll make sure to get your email and then the specific topic you asked for, and then I'll try to compile those and maybe I can send those out as we start to review those comments over the next month and a half, 2 months. But yeah, I think we'll just try to be as engaging as possible and make sure that as we're responding to things, respond to those comments over the next bit of time, and then also enter our final environmental assessment so that when you do see it, it wouldn't be new information.
In the application, the operators are going to have an enclosed cab with an air filter.
I need operations help, ma'am. I'm sorry. Jason or Marshall? Because there's a better answer than me on this one.
Well, that's stated in the application. That's not part of the question. In your application, it says that you're a heavy equipment operator. Your heavy equipment operator will have an enclosed cab with an air filter because of the dust and whatnot. But there's a school bus right there. The school bus stop where children are standing outside. Have you worked with the Shepherd School District to mitigate that? Children being exposed? Oh, I'm sorry, independent.
Was the question on air filter for the operator?
The operators have access to filtered air into their equipment, and there's children that stand within feet of the operation waiting for the bus. How do we protect the operator and not consider the children was the question?
The operator have standard equipment, like equipment has a cab filter. I mean, it's going to be standard equipment, nothing. Standard equipment, it won't be anything extra on there.
What they're asking you is, what about the kids, the bus stop that's right there?
There actually is a bus stop at Shepherd Act 87 where previously there's been children becoming dropped off.
There still are. Yep.
So there still are. So there is a bus stop right there at Shepherd Act 87. How can you protect those children from not having that dust bowl right there when it's right there?
Will this coincide with the wind events though, where we won't be operating in the wind?
Okay, let's say 35 miles per hour, and this go 15 miles per hour, that's still done. So those wind precautions are not adequate at all.
We won't have to worry about it because it blows 24/7 out there.
So the whole thing will be shut down. That's okay.
So I do have another question. Please, you say you'll only have 2 on staff, but you've got a 6-acre hole to cover, and you say there's going to be 6 inches of dirt covering it at night. When those employees want to go home at 5, and how are you going to guarantee they're going to put 6 inches and not just 3 inches, and compact that so it does not blow?
You want to address the operations really quick, and then we have learned that we need to vacate the space here pretty quickly, so we'll answer this question, and then please, we'll wrap up after that.
Yeah, so I'll be overseeing it. There's going to be a supervisor or manager on site. Once again, that's part of doing what we are saying we're going to be able to do.
And what if there's like a maintenance issue with one of your trucks, one of your equipment? Come 4 o'clock when you got to cover that for on a Friday night. How does that work? How do those 2 people get that done? Don't you think 2 people aren't enough for that big a job?
Especially if it's going wind. If it's going wind even below your threshold, it's still going to fall in that dirt road.
So that's part of where DEQ comes in as far as compliance. So as they're doing this, as they're doing construction, they'll be able to, be able to know. Dust control is part of the application. You got to control dust on site. If that's something we notice, you change operations until that is remedied. To your point,
That needs to be fixed from the beginning.
Absolutely.
We don't want to learn, for example, where we're
Sure.
already put into danger of breathing the stuff because it's blowing at us right away.
Absolutely.
It needs to be taken care of before.
right, and that's it's good for us to have this information. Like I said, this comment period is really, really valuable because then us as regulators can be like, okay, based on what we're hearing, we might need you to bolster your dust control measures, and that might include you wetting the dirt before you spread it. It might include wetting that waste. But as part of this, that's part of this process.
35 miles per hour.
Correct. Absolutely.
It's a ridiculous wind speed
Correct.
to start with. It
Correct.
needs to be more like 15 miles per hour to start.
Another thing you had brought up was 6 acres of coverage. 6 acre phases, but the open space within that phase is not going to be the whole 6 acres. It'll be 2 to 3 truck widths at a time. I say this just based on what I experienced at most class 2 landfills. To keep a working face and keep your litter where it needs to be, they have to keep their working face in a way that's manageable for the facility. I've gone to facilities and I'm like, hey, you know what, I'm noticing you're not able to manage your litter appropriately. I'm gonna need you to cut that working area in half so that you can manage your litter. And as you're able to manage that, then you expand operations as appropriate. So that's something we would also look at. So cover wouldn't be over the whole 6 acres, it would just be over their working area.
That's what you guys said.
Right.
15 or 20 feet in the ground.
Right, but
Yeah,
for,
40 feet, how are they going to keep that covered by 6 inches of dirt?
it's 6 inches of dirt every day over the life of that landfill. So it wouldn't be just 40 feet. It wouldn't be 40 feet of fluff and then you put 6 inches of dirt on top of 40 feet of fluff. It'd be,
Is that cover similar to the one that you go on grain trucks when they drive down the highway?
say that one more time.
Is the cover that they're gonna put over this landfill similar to what they put over grain trucks that go down the highway?
Similar to green chase.
That's a big landfill to cover it every night. I mean, to prevent, things from blowing out. I would like to know what kind of cover you got to put over that landfill. Is it similar, like I say, to what they put over grain trucks, go down the highway to keep the grain from blowing out?
Obviously, it was soil, correct?
I don't understand the question.
It's dirt. I think he's comparing the truck cover.
So the area that will be covered with dirt is probably less than half the size of this basketball court on a daily basis, because like Fred said, we're keeping a really small working area intentionally. So it's actually, it probably is like less than half the size of this basketball court is what we'd be closing in. I'm talking about what we'd be covering daily, the daily cover.
Will you pile in before you cover?
Daily, they'll probably run about 5 to 6 foot lifts, I would guess. With a compactor, a waste compactor. Well, the way their trailers work, they eject the material out the back. So the trailers would back it into the disposal area. Well, the wind restrictions have been committed to. So. I mean, they're going to be graveling on-site roads. So all the access points will have gravel. The bottom of the cell will have gravel in it. So all the access areas, they'll have gravel so they can get in and out of the facility. I mean, at the Billings landfill, it's about as clayey a material as you can imagine. It's very windy, and they're able to contend with it. Yeah, well, yeah, I've been out here, and sites can contend with wind. I've worked at very windy sites, and it can be dealt with.
I have one very quick question before we wrap up.
I want to be respectful to the facility, so if we could just wrap up and...
General question about the process.
Okay, go ahead.
The EA is going to change drastically, I would hope, from the now point
So
all.
the stuff
So when you have a chance
that goes into
of this, or you're just gonna shut it down, send it out after.
household hazardous
Sure.
waste.
That's a great way to wrap up. You want to talk about next steps?
And that's legal.
Sure, so the next steps, like I said, I'll try to engage with everything as some of the questions that have come in tonight. We'll talk about the aim and the 2 parts per million. And some of the other things that come up tonight, and maybe try to answer some of those comments as we move forward. As we edit that DEA, if we deem it necessary to, publish that with new information, if it wasn't already addressed, then we'd have to consider internally with the applicant to determine, but yes, we've got, like I said before, please continue to submit those comments. We've got about 9 more days for this comment period. But if we get that EA out and we determine that it's a lot more information than was there before, then it could be warranted that we have another little chunk of the comment period. But like I said,
Briarwood is like.
I will try to continue to engage over the next month and a half. We also need to review the comments that have come in so far, and inevitably we'll get more, hope to get more. As long as there's something new, substantive questions from tonight as well, things that we might not have considered, I absolutely want to make sure we get together.
Because nobody
as well.
would know unless you're testing, unless you've done some sort of study, as to how far it actually is going to. And the same, like, I would say they should take it down with the ESO on when you stay, and then also underneath their tolerance level, dump it, and see what happens. Videotape it, expose it for everybody to see, the public to see, so we can see, we know, because they've never done it. You've never done, they've never done a dry test.
I watched them at the Billings landfill during high rain.
But not there. I mean, where the public are here.
I can bring that up with them.
I think we should.
I mean, I don't know what the legalities would be with us dumping some waste out there without it being licensed.
Yeah.
I mean, but maybe we could say the DEQ is a one-shot deal. We want to videotape it, we want to invite people, and we'll pick it up and scoop it all up when we're done.
Yes, and like I said, I'm going to try to engage with some of our internal staff at DEQ to see if we can have some updated provincial property values. The MDT, like I said, the Billings District had reviewed that and stated that there didn't need to be anything. However, we can re-engage with them and note some of the comments that have come in. That's why I say, because these comments have come in, we can share them with the people that will be able to make those decisions. DEQ can't speak for MDT, so we can't implement something that we don't oversee, but we can inform the agencies that are affected, and then hopefully, if they need to make different decisions, they, give them the opportunity
Now,
to do so.
go on high winds. What happens on high winds when it's already down, then high winds come up, they have to stop. However, there's still ESR on the ground. So what happens? What happens?
I'd be interested. I mean, I think that some of this, no matter how many things we tell you guys, at some point there has to be trust in the company that's going to do it.
To the 20
Because
letters
we can
that
tell
they
you guys
sent out a
from Line
couple
Street
years
Hall
ago,
what they're going to
to
do.
the
And until they put it in
people?
operation, we don't know.
Is that how
And so the
you
question
are?
is, do you trust specific or not?
So you can send it to us, and we'll engage with those those agencies, but you can also reach out to those agencies as well. That is absolutely your right to be able to do that. So if you've got concerns with NTP,
Promised, but they have not fulfilled.
the Sage Grouse Preservation Office, any of the local law enforcement, you are more than welcome to reach out to them, and then have them engage with us as well. We've engaged with a lot of these agencies already, but that's absolutely appropriate. There was one last question, sorry, that was written down that we didn't get to. It was, has DEQ ever denied a permit in a certain situation, or something we describe and how often are they denied? So typically what we see, and this spans, so our solid waste section oversees solid waste management facilities, we also oversee septic tank pumpers and land application and recycling facilities and a bunch of different types of facilities. But generally with application process, generally what we see, if there's a notice of deficiency, we give the applicants time to submit things to us to either remedy that and come back to the administrative rules as required by the administrative rules. If they don't respond in a certain amount of time, they have to reapply. And if they can't fulfill it, we will deny it. In my time at DEQ, that has not happened. There are other people that have been at DEQ longer that might have happened in their tenure, and it just not happened in mine. Some ways that permit might be denied, we have had sometimes that permit, not solid waste, but more septic tank pumper, where public comments came in and the applicant withdrew their application from the program. So in that case, we would then not continue moving forward with licensing that program, or that application. And in other instances, the county has either changed zoning, or the county has rescinded an application on an application that has come into us, and at that point, if a signature is rescinded, then that is no longer considered a complete application. So in this instance, if the county were to then say, we don't want it here, we're withdrawing our signature from the application, we would then have to reevaluate, and that would be considered a complete application, and that's happened in a couple instances.
I think that's reasonable.
More with our substitute pumping program, I have not experienced it in our solid waste program, but generally that's how that would happen.
Most of the people are pretty reasonable for it, and I would be here too if you put it next to my area. So I totally get it. I think there's a certain fraction where it's way over the top.
Was it just a question on
they can never ask
transient?
any questions. They stay here until 8 in the morning asking questions. And a lot of them are relevant. But the big questions, you guys are asking the big questions.
Just general access to the property. I believe is the property currently fenced? I know that there will be fences around the leachate collection area, but I'll let Bob speak to some of that engineering as far as access to the facility. And then we probably have to wrap up because I think he's trying to get us to clean up.
The site's currently fenced with a barbed wire fence and we'll have a gate right there at the entrance. But the actual smaller operation area, the first 25 years, we'll have a chain link fence. And so we'll have a gate right at the Shepherd Acton Road, and then we'll have another gate and a full fence of the actual work area we're going to be working in the next 25 years.
What's the plan for the charter fence on the ranch?
What's that?
Okay, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up, and you can ask individual questions, and we'll get you information to you if you had specific questions. Thank you so much for being here. I do want to say I facilitate a lot of DEQ meetings, and the question and answer is so helpful because it tells us what you have concerns about and gives us more information. So appreciate all of your thoughtful questions. We have all